You're paying more for olive oil than ever before. But most Australians still don't know what they're buying, because what's sold as extra virgin here often isn't what you think. By the end of this list, you'll realise the problem isn't one brand. It's how olive oil is defined in Australia. Number 10. Extra virgin is a category, not a promise. Most Australians believe extra virgin olive oil means fresh premium oil straight from olives. Legally, extra virgin is only a classification. It describes how an oil performed when it was tested at a specific moment in time. It does not guarantee freshness when you buy it, it does not guarantee how it was stored, and it does not guarantee how much quality remains months later. Olive oil is a fresh fruit juice. It degrades with heat, light, and time. An oil can qualify as extra virgin when it's tested, then slowly lose the very characteristics people think they're paying for. That's where the disconnect begins. Most Australians are never told. What almost nobody explains is this: that extra virgin test didn't happen in your supermarket. It didn't happen last week, and it definitely didn't happen in your kitchen. In many cases, it happened months earlier, sometimes on the other side of the world. Think about the timeline. Olives are harvested, they're crushed and processed. The oil is tested and classified. Then it's stored, shipped, stored again, distributed, placed on a shelf under bright lights, and finally taken home. All of that happens after the oil has already earned the label extra virgin. During that entire journey, time keeps ticking. Olive oil doesn't suddenly fail. It slowly fades, flavour dulls, aroma disappears. Antioxidants break down. The label never changes, so when Australians assume extra virgin means fresh at the moment of purchase, they're not being careless. They're filling in a gap the label doesn't explain. This isn't about trickery, it's about timing. When that becomes clear, the rest of this list starts to make a lot more sense. Number 9. Why smooth olive oil is often a warning sign. Ask Australians what they like about their olive oil, and many say the same thing. It's smooth, it doesn't burn, it tastes mild. That sounds good, yet real fresh olive oil isn't meant to be silent. Fresh extra virgin olive oil contains natural compounds that cause bitterness and a peppery sensation at the back of the throat. That slight cough isn't a defect, it's a freshness signal. When oil tastes completely flat or greasy, it usually means one of two things. Either the olives were low quality to begin with, or the oil has degraded over time. Australian consumers have been trained to prefer smoothness, so producers often design oils to avoid bitterness. But smooth doesn't mean premium. It often means compromised. One detail most people never consider is this: taste isn't just preference, it's conditioning. When you grow up drinking sweet coffee, bitter coffee tastes wrong. If you grow up on light beer, strong beer tastes harsh. And if you grow up with flat olive oil, fresh olive oil feels aggressive. Australian palates didn't randomly decide to prefer smooth olive oil. They were trained that way. For decades, the most widely available olive oils were designed to be mild, neutral, and inoffensive. That shaped expectations. So when people finally encounter real fresh olive oil, grassy, bitter, peppery, the reaction isn't delight. It's suspicion. They think something is wrong, but nothing is wrong. What feels unfamiliar is often what's real, and what feels normal may just be what you've always been given. Number 8. Clear bottles under supermarket lights. Olive oil has 3 enemies: light, heat, and time. Now look at how olive oil is sold in Australia. Clear bottles, bright fluorescent lights, long shelf lives. Light exposure accelerates oxidation. Oxidation destroys flavour and nutritional value. That's why so many people say olive oil doesn't taste like it used to. It's not imagination, it's chemistry. Dark glass and tin slow degradation. Clear packaging speeds it up. Clear bottles sell better visually, so quality is sacrificed for appearance. The most dangerous part is that this damage is invisible. Oxidized olive oil doesn't turn cloudy. It doesn't change colour dramatically, it doesn't look spoiled, it looks fine. The first things to go are aroma and complexity. The oil smells flatter, it tastes duller. The peppery finish disappears. To the eye, nothing seems wrong. That's also why so many Australians say, it looks normal, so it must be fine. Imagine buying milk that sat under bright lights for months, slowly warming and cooling every day. It might still look white, but you'd expect the quality to suffer. Olive oil is no different. The problem isn't one bad bottle. It's slow, silent degradation happening in plain sight. Number 7. Marketing words that sound safe, but mean nothing. Australian olive oil labels are full of comforting language. Cold-pressed, pure, premium, traditional. Most of these words have no strict legal meaning. They are marketing phrases, not guarantees. One of the most misunderstood phrases is packed in. Packed in Australia does not mean grown in Australia. It does not mean pressed in Australia. It means the oil was bottled here. Many Australians assume packed locally equals produced locally. That assumption is wrong, and brands rely on it. This confusion isn't accidental. Country of origin wording is one of the most powerful psychological shortcuts in food marketing. When Australians see words like Italian, Mediterranean, or European, they don't read them as logistics. They read them as quality. They imagine olive groves, family farms, and traditional methods passed down for generations. Labels aren't written for imagination. They're written for compliance. Packed in Australia only tells you where the bottle was filled. Made in can still involve imported ingredients. And unless it clearly says grown and pressed in, the olives may have come from multiple countries. That's how two bottles can look almost identical, yet represent completely different supply chains. One might be relatively fresh. The other may have travelled across continents before you ever opened it. And unless you know exactly how to read that label, you'd never know the difference. That's not consumer failure, that's information asymmetry. Number 6. Imported legacy brands and the trust gap. Brand names matter most at this point. Many Australians grew up trusting imported olive oil brands. They feel European, they feel established, they feel safe. Brands like Bertolli, Filippo Berio, Carapelli, and Colavera are familiar to households across the country. These brands are legal. They are not automatically fake. But historically, some have faced overseas lawsuits, regulatory action, or public criticism over labelling practices and origin claims. Not because they sold poison, but because consumers assumed extra virgin and imported meant more than it legally did. That history matters, because trust based on familiarity alone is no longer enough. What many people misunderstood about these brands was this. The issue was rarely that the oil wasn't olive oil. The issue was expectation. Words like imported, Italian, or extra virgin carried emotional meaning for consumers that went far beyond their legal definitions. People believed those labels meant the olives were grown in one place, processed immediately, and bottled at peak freshness. In reality, many of these oils were blended, sourced from multiple regions, and bottled for consistency, not immediacy. When lawsuits and regulatory actions happened overseas, they weren't always about toxic products. They were about whether consumers were misled into believing something that wasn't technically promised. That distinction matters because it explains why these brands still exist today. They didn't disappear because they weren't selling poison. They were forced to clarify what their labels actually meant. The problem is that many shoppers never learned that lesson. So the trust remained, even though the assumptions behind it were wrong. When people feel disappointed now, they often blame themselves. They shouldn't. They were filling in blanks the label never corrected. Number 5. Supermarket home brand olive oil. Australian supermarkets sell enormous volumes of home brand olive oil. Products from Coles, Woolworths, Aldi, and Costco dominate shelves. These oils are not automatically bad. Some batches test well, others degrade quickly. The issue is consistency. Large volume oils rely on long supply chains and extended shelf life. That means freshness and storage matter more than the logo. That's why one bottle tastes fine and the next tastes flat. With home brand olive oil, rules matter more than brands. The reason inconsistency is so common with supermarket olive oil is simple. Large retailers don't usually rely on a single producer. They source from multiple suppliers across seasons and regions to maintain price and availability. That means one batch may come from fresher oil, and the next may come from oil that's been stored longer. The label stays the same, the bottle looks the same. But what's inside can be very different. That's why Australians often say, "It was great last time, but awful this time." They're not imagining it. With high volume oils, you're not buying a single product, you're buying a system. And systems prioritise scale and consistency of supply, not peak freshness. That's why relying on brand loyalty alone doesn't work here. Understanding the rules matters more. Number 4. Why plastic containers divide experts and shoppers. Many high-volume olive oils are sold in plastic. Plastic is cheaper, it's lighter and extends shelf life visually. But olive oil is acidic, and over time, storage material matters. That's why packaging triggers so much debate. Glass and tins protect oil better from light and chemical interaction. Plastic increases risk over long periods. This doesn't mean every plastic bottle is dangerous. Time becomes the deciding factor. And most Australians keep olive oil far longer than they realise. This nuance often gets lost online. Plastic isn't instant poison. Glass isn't magic. Time is the real issue. Olive oil is acidic, and over long periods, storage material can influence how well it holds up. That's why experts argue about plastic. Short-term use is one thing, but long-term storage is another. If an oil sits in plastic for months under heat and light, degradation risk increases. This doesn't mean people need to panic. Storage choices matter more the longer that oil sits unused, and most households keep olive oil much longer than they think. Number 3. Why Australian-grown olive oil feels different. Australian olive oil is not automatically superior, but it has one major advantage: traceability. Shorter supply chains mean fewer months in containers and warehouses. Australian producers are more likely to display harvest dates and comply with standards that emphasise both chemical testing and sensory evaluation. Producers like Cobram Estate are often referenced not because they're perfect, but because verification is easier. And for shoppers who value clarity, that matters. Expectations also need to be reset here. Australian-grown olive oil doesn't mean every bottle will taste incredible. Climate varies, harvest timing varies, producers make different stylistic choices. What local production really offers is fewer unknowns. When oil is grown, pressed, bottled and sold within the same country, there are fewer months of storage, fewer handoffs, and fewer opportunities for degradation. That doesn't make it immune to poor handling, but it does make the journey easier to trace. For many shoppers, that traceability is worth more than origin romance. It replaces mystery with information. And in a market where prices keep rising, certainty becomes part of the value. It's not magic. It's simply because fewer things can quietly go wrong before it reaches your kitchen. Number 2. The myths Australians still believe. There are myths that refuse to die. That colour determines quality. Bitterness means something is wrong. Expensive oil is always better. And legality equals honesty. None of these are reliable. Colour varies by olive variety. Bitterness often signals freshness. Price reflects marketing as much as quality. And legality only defines minimum standards. Expectation is a different thing. Olive oil lives in that gap. That gap is where frustration builds. Australians don't feel misled because the oil is illegal. They feel misled because their expectations were never corrected. Australians were never told that extra virgin doesn't mean fresh today, that smoothness can signal age, or that a clear bottle underlights comes with trade-offs. So when people finally learn these things, the reaction is anger, not at brands, at themselves. They think they should have known better. But how could they? This information isn't taught. It isn't obvious, and it isn't printed clearly on the bottle. The system assumes knowledge most people were never given. That's why olive oil debates get emotional so quickly. They're not really about taste. They're about trust. When trust erodes, every bottle feels suspicious. Number 1. Why most Australians have never tasted real fresh olive oil. This is the uncomfortable truth. Most Australians have never tasted olive oil at its best. They've tasted oil designed to survive long transport, bright shelves, and extended storage. They've tasted oil engineered not to offend. Fresh olive oil is alive, grassy, bitter, peppery, not a whisper. A statement. Once you taste it, supermarket olive oil often feels disappointing, not because it's fake, but because the system prioritizes shelf stability over freshness. The goal here isn't panic or blaming shoppers, it's clarity about how olive oil actually reaches Australian shelves. Becoming an expert isn't required. Memorizing chemistry or chasing obscure brands isn't either. What matters is recognizing the trade-offs. Shelf life versus freshness. Appearance versus protection. Marketing language versus real information. Once those trade-offs are clear, the noise fades. Choosing olive oil becomes far less confusing. Read labels differently. Value transparency over tradition. Prioritize freshness over familiarity. Olive oil isn't just another pantry item, it's something used every day. And with a clearer view of how the system works, that bottle will never look the same again. If this video changed how olive oil looks in your kitchen, share it with someone who uses it daily. This is the kind of information most people never hear until it's too late. For more Australian consumer deep dives, tap like so this reaches more people. And to stay ahead of misleading labels, hidden ingredients, and products Australians trust but shouldn't, subscribe. We don't tell people what to buy. We show how the system really works. If there's a bottle in your kitchen right now, drop the brand and where it was bought in the comments. Others are already comparing notes. That's how people stay informed. That's how communities protect each other. I'll see you in the next one.